Welcome back to the Success for Life podcast. Today, we're going to discuss an awesome topic for all athletes, but obviously, people also out in the world of business or anything they're looking to accomplish, which is peak performance. We're going to discuss how to gain it and the in depth process for peak performance in order to become a peak performer. Okay, so before we do that, like, subscribe. Make sure you share this podcast. If you enjoy listening to this, you want to see more of it, please comment anything you'd like to see. We'll talk about it and we'll discuss it and we'll research it. Peak performance. So before I go real in depth on peak performance, there's a bunch of different groups that have ideas on peak performance that I want to show. And then I'll lead with a couple of quotes here before I do. So let's go real quick here. Peak performance begins with your taking complete responsibility for your life and everything that happens to you. So Brian Tracy, who is a world-renowned sales trainer and motivational speaker, he is, if you can ever pick up any one of his books, they are the best. It'll help you in every facet of your life in attaining peak performance. But let's break down what he discusses here. He talks about taking complete responsibility for your life and everything that happens to you. Well, that means that the gifts that you've been bestowed on you, you have to be responsible for your actions and things that happen to you. So when things go well or things don't go well, in order to become a peak performer, you have to be able to recognize those things and then be able to take responsibility for the good and the bad and then learn from that. So that way you can get an opportunity at peak performance. We got a second one here from an athlete. This is Greg Louganis. This is so simple but amazing. Arguably the most decorated, well, definitely the most, I think the most decorated diver of all time. American diver, won multiple gold medals. Most would say that he's the greatest diver of all time in Olympic history. Greg Louganis. Peak performance is meditation in motion. I think that's an incredibly interesting statement. And I'll tell you why. This is why I put it in here, because I'm going to go through what some other groups, companies call peak performance and what you have to do, and sports psychologists, their kind of take on it. Meditation in motion. I interpret this to mean basically that you have repped tremendous performance over and over again in practice, and you have been put in difficult, high competition situations over and over again, that be giving peak performance becomes second nature. So I think that that's really, really an interesting thing that Greg Louganis talks about there. So simple. Peak performance is meditation in motion. Okay, let's look at some ideas on peak performance, and I'll make. I don't know why it looks like that there, but okay. Ideas on peak performance. So let's go to this. All right, this was from, I think this is from American Express on what they use to create peak performance team. To create a peak performance person, team, work environment, three things are necessary. Each person has to be clear, committed to values, vision, mission, purpose, and goals of the company. Developing this clarity is the primary responsibility of management. You must continually reinforce positive self-image in each person. You must make your team members see themselves valuable, worthy, and competent, getting better in every day, every week, so on and so forth. Build, support, and reinforce the self-esteem of each person so that you can take your team members even more the result of the way you treat them in every interaction. This is definitely a corporate philosophy. First of all, I think I fell asleep in the first statement because there's so much in there, as opposed to this statement, which tells you where you got to go to get to that level. Okay. And obviously, there's no actions on it, but it gives you a great idea of what peak performance is. All right. Now, let's go to another one. I'm not going to read this whole thing in depth, but I'll just read the main bullet points here. This was from Pacific Coast Consulting. Start with an end in mind. I'm not sure that I agree with it. I know goals are important. Actions don't just train your employees. Be a coach, sure. Create goal-oriented performance, employee development systems, career maps, advancement plans. I mean, these are all things that are nice to have, and I think are good to have within your established structure as backup, but doesn't really relate with people. I mean, again, you might be falling asleep. Listen to how this gets you going. Maybe my podcast is making you fall asleep. I don't know. All right, then focus on interpersonal communications in the workplace. Being a great communicator is important in the workplace. How those interactions are encouraging, clear, honest, open. I think you could really restructure this. This is okay, nothing great. I don't think it's going to get you there. All right, so here's some more I like. Derek Jeter. Peak performers are not necessarily more talented as they are committed to the process every day. This is from a sports psychologist, and any athlete can reach their peak performance. This is Derek Jeter. There may be people that have more talent than you, but there's no excuse for anyone to work harder than you do. Simple to the fact. It's amazing how in athletics, I think that you can break these things down to simplicity. I also think the mirror of athletics in the workforce is sales. When you have sales and you have to hit sales numbers, that's the mirror of it. The big difference between elite athletes and average athletes, peak performers do while most athletes hope. I talked about that yesterday on confidence with Michael Jordan's quote. Okay, where he talked about others talk about it or hope for things to happen, wish for things to happen. Others do, and that's a big thing with developing confidence as well. Peak performers are driven to accomplish certain objectives rather than hoping that they perform well, accepting whatever results falls their way. I love much more the sports psychologist and what he talks about here. Joe Namath quote: "If you aren't going all the way, then why go at all?" Well, Joe Namath definitely knows a lot about that, and it makes a great point. If you're not giving everything you have, why even bother? All right, so this is also from a sports psychologist, and I want to give proper credit here because I don't know where I got it from. Peak Performance Sports. I don't know if they came up with it or they got it from somebody else. Having a vision, that's key and clear. Okay, so I think there's a difference between a vision and goals. So those are two different things. Where you want to get to an objective that makes all the sacrifices well worth it. Okay, so making those sacrifices, you have to have a vision of where you want to go. If it's not clear, concise, your goals won't matter. Peak performers revel in the challenges of sport. Peak performers do not see obstacles as something to avoid. They understand that fire forges their character. That's what I talked about with Greg Louganis. Okay, meditation in motion, right? You relish the opportunity. They seek challenges to learn, grow, and develop. They are better at handling adversity and challenges. They take risks, risking nothing. So no risk, no reward. You have to be able to go for things. If you don't go for it, you're never going to get there. You're not going to get the big job by not asking for it. You're not going to get the big pay raise by asking for it. You're not going to have the opportunity to get on stage if you don't ask for that opportunity. Those things are important. You're not going to have the opportunity to get in the game if you don't ask for the opportunity and then perform at a high level. Peak performers believe in their ability to achieve, argue for your potential rather than your limits. Failure has more to do with the lack of belief than the lack of talent. Peak performers deeply believe they will accomplish their vision. Confidence. We talked about that yesterday. The reason these athletes perform belief and abilities to overcome obstacles, peak performers are never deterred by mistakes, losses, or uneventful circumstances. They believe things are within their control. Now, not everything's within your control, but believing that you have an opportunity to control your future is key. That is key. Okay, so this is also something they came up with. They have the 5 Ps, and I'll talk to some about something a little bit different, but these are definitely elements. Planning your vision, preparing, so that's what you're going to do each day. We talked about that, writing things down. We talked about preparedness, Process, focus on the process, concern yourself with falls, mistakes. I always say, like, if you're a basketball player and you're shooting and you're in a slump, you just keep shooting. Okay. And you're going to get out of that slump. Trust the process. Positive. Maintaining a positive outlook helps you persevere through tough times. Yes, peak performers are positive about the opportunities that are there, and they're also being realistic does not help you be a peak performer. Okay, you have to be a little unrealistic to be a peak performer. Push, go the extra mile, and move out of your comfort zone. If you want to peak performing peak level, you need to be both hard and smart. A tennis legend Billie Jean King, who was a great tennis player back in the day, champions keep playing until they get it right. Let nothing stop you. Let nothing deter you. Keep climbing. That ability and that desire to keep going at it, and the want to do it is key. Creates this peak performance in meditation and motion. Okay. So ideals on peak performance. And I want to talk more about the ideals on it. So there's certain ideals that we discussed in all those areas, but some key elements. Vision, having a vision. Okay. Vision, that vision then creates goals that create action. Okay. You have to have those three areas. Vision, okay, vision, goals, and action, okay, to be able to have peak performance. We talked about planning, preparedness, and then confidence, belief in oneself are key ideals for someone attaining peak performance. Steps to gaining it. So I think that from a simplicity standpoint, this is excellent. Plan, prepare, process, positive, push. But the steps in order to gain it is to first write down what you think you'd like to do. Okay. Then a roadmap is a better way, I think. What is your roadmap to attaining it? And what are the timelines associated with your peak? So, my favorite thing, and this is one of the things that I applied this in coaching as well in football, and a lot of people had a hard time understanding it. Um, my teams usually play the best towards the end of the season because our goal was to peak at the end of the year to give ourselves the best opportunity to succeed. And so you'll see like our best games most of the time are our last games, or the last couple of games. And if you nail it slightly wrong, it's the week before. But you're always trying to get to be the best when you need to be the best in championship season. So let's think about that. In order to get peak performance when you need it most at the Olympics, 100-meter dash sprinters, okay, in football playoffs or the end of the season. Now, it's a little trickier in team sports because you have to first get there and then you can have that. So it's almost like a double peak situation, and you might have multiple peaks in the season. But the 100-meter dash in track and field at the Olympics is the number one example of, are you peaking at the right time and gaining that peak performance? So that roadmap gives you a periodization strategy. And what do I mean by periodization? A period of time along that roadmap that you then can point to as being on track or off track of your roadmap for peak performance. You have an end timeline. Okay. So they say talk with the end in line that is applicable in certain things and not as applicable in others. But the vision, if you do have a distinct end timeline, like the 100-meter dash at the Olympics on XYZ date, that roadmap and periodization of development towards your peak at the end. Now, one of the little known things with 100-meter dash sprinters, people think that when you're training for a 100-meter dash, your training is on a continuous upswing of intensity, and then maybe the last day or so you come up. Well, 100-meter dash sprinters, the last 2 to 3 weeks, they're either in a taper or completely doing nothing more than warm-ups. All right. And why is that? So they're such a high level, they're trying to recover from all their tremendous amount of training to be able to peak for that right time. Sometimes as part of a peak, you have competitions as a part of that. So you have little peaks that go to the gigantic peak, which is each week a game in football, building to the crescendo of a championship. The 100-meter dash, you may have meets along the way throughout the season, periodized out in order to get your performance. So, in order to gain peak performance, you have the roadmap, you have periodization, you have small peaks all the way to a large peak. And then you have to have competitions and overcoming of adversity. Okay. And those are like the adversities, the valleys along the way. Some of it may have been early in your life. That may be the adversity. And you have to be able to overcome those things in order to get to that peak performance. Establishing long-term peak performance. Is it possible? Okay. Is it possible? So with peak performance, it's exactly what it says is the peak is the very top. But you could have lower level peaks and then you could have the long-term end peak. So how long can you maintain it? Well, there is, when you have a peak, there is you rise to the top, and then you start to go. You may have a plateau, and then you may go down. Okay, and you may not know. You may peak later in something. So sometimes in the 100-meter dash, guy runs a good time, but in the 100-meter dash, maybe wins the Olympics, but then 2 weeks later breaks a world record. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it happens 2 weeks prior. You've seen at the Olympic trials, someone breaks a world record, right? So there are different times. There is a plateau period where you can establish certain level of peak performance, and then before it starts to go down. Your training, your timing, your roadmap can dictate long-term peak performance. Now, in business, and in any sort of item-based thing, you can have longer peaks. So you could have longer times of success. But if you're a salesman, your best month is your best month, right? So how many best months you could have will establish your peak, and then how long can you maintain that level, right? That's why you see so many in the stock market, so many companies have a great quarter and then they can't maintain it, and so on and so forth, right? Because you can't always have your best quarter. So you want to be your goal is to be able to establish that as long as possible. So that requires repetition and training, and then an established plan. Techniques to improve. Number one is the roadmap. A roadmap is exactly what that is. End line, beginning line, small peaks along the way, periodization times, and then little notes about what you have to do. Goals can be part of your end line. And establishing that little short time frame or long time frame to where you got to go is the first technique to improve peak performance. The second one is to research best practices in your field, okay, and seek out the very best that teach it and that you can learn from in order to shorten learning curves and then improve performance at a quicker level, okay? Seeking out experts to be able to get that done. And then the third part is constant repetition at a high level. You miss a shot in basketball from one place, from a certain location. Okay, let's say straight on from the 3-point line. You shoot again until you make it. You establish a number of times you have to make it in order for you to move on to the next shot. 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 times. Okay. Steph Curry has been known to make 53 pointers in a row in practice. More, maybe 100. I read, I think it was 50, but maybe it was 100. And he will make it over and over again. So when you think you're a good 3-point shooter, can you make 50 in a row? And that's from different locations, right? So you got to get good at one area before you move on to the next. So those are the 3 techniques that you could use to really improve. I hope this area of peak performance will start to give you a plan and a roadmap of what you need to do. You develop that roadmap. You get the repetitions necessary. You have to make sure that you seek out experts, and then you have to believe in yourself and work on your confidence in order to take those risks that are necessary to improve, overcome adversity, and to be the very best that you can be. We talked about that with confidence. Your goal is to be the very best you can be, not what anybody else is. This is Coach Schumann for Success for Life podcast. Please like, subscribe, share, comments of anything you'd like to see. We'll do a video on it to hopefully help you guys. If you can, if you're on the podcast side of it, give us 5 stars. It helps us with the algorithm. And till next time, the Daily Mindset, peak performance. You can achieve yours. Coach Schumann signing off.